Good morning, boys and girls. My name is Miss Julie, and I'm your host today. This is your teacher, Miss Quinn. Today, we will learn more about what life was like for a young Norse boy.
Today's lesson is titled, Home of the Vikings. I can't wait to learn more about what life was like for the Vikings. By the end of today's lesson, we will explain who the Vikings were. We will be able to describe Bjorn and his father's traits and feelings and explain how their actions contributed to the sequence of the story. We will determine the literal and non-literal meanings of common sayings and phrases. And lastly, boys and girls, we're going to demonstrate understanding of literary terms such as characters, setting, dialogue, point of view, narrator, and narrations in discussing Home of the Vikings. Let's get started, boys and girls.
All right.
Let's begin by first discussing the meaning of some important vocabulary words that we will reference in this lesson. And boys and girls, it was quite difficult to come up with some motions for these vocabulary words, but if you come up with a hand motion, feel free to do so. Let's get started. Our first word is anvil. Say anvil.
Anvil.
An anvil is a heavy iron block on which heated, softened metals are hammered into different shapes.
Hammered.
Can you do that hand motion? Hammered. Anvil. The blacksmith placed a hot piece of metal onto the anvil and began to hammer it into a sword. Our next word is counsel. Say counsel.
Counsel.
To counsel is to give advice and guidance. Because Leo was known for his wise counsel, people said he would make a terrific doctor. Our next word, boys and girls, is gruff.
Gruff.
Say gruff.
Gruff.
Gruff is to be harsh, low, and rough. Mr. Cho spoke to us in a gruff tone. We know he was in a grumpy mood. Our next word is reliable. Say reliable.
Reliable.
Reliable is to be trustworthy and dependable. Tucker had many reliable friends who were always there when he needed them. Do you have some reliable friends?
I do, Miss Quinn.
And lastly, boys and girls, our word is treacherous. Say treacherous.
Treacherous.
Treacherous is something that is very dangerous.
Ooh. Kind of like those waters that we traveled, Miss Quinn?
Yes.
They were treacherous.
Yoko would not cross the high, treacherous bridge because it was old and rotting. Now, let's reflect about what we've learned about the Vikings so far.
All right, Miss Quinn, I'm ready.
Miss Julie, can you share what you know already about the Vikings?
Absolutely, Miss Quinn. I know that the Vikings lived in Scandinavia.
You're absolutely correct. They did.
Which is present day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark.
You're correct. Anything else, Miss Julie, boys and girls? Anything else you know already about the Vikings?
Ooh, Miss Quinn, I'd love to share. I remember that they were known as the lords of the seas. People feared them because they were ferocious.
You're right. I remember that from the previous lesson.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, boys and girls, I want you to think about what you want to learn. What are you wondering about? Miss Julie?
I've got a lot of questions.
Ooh, you want to share?
Can I share a few?
Yes.
I want to know, I've learned that they're ferocious and they did a lot of traveling on the waters, but I want to know, what was life like for the Vikings? A little bit more, Miss Quinn.
I kind of want to know that too.
And you know what? I also want to know, what type of people were the Vikings?
Those are great questions. And I wonder if the children back then did some of the same things that our children do today.
That's a good question.
Are you wondering that, boys and girls? Hopefully we'll find out. We are going to learn more about the Vikings through a fictional narrative. The narrator of this story is a 13-year-old boy named Bjorn.
Ooh, I'm going to put my helmet on for Bjorn.
Put your helmet on. I think I'm going to keep mine off because
Okay.
I don't want those waves
To knock it off?
Yes.
All right.
The narrator of this story is a 13-year-old boy named Bjorn. I mentioned that earlier. The way the author chooses to tell the story is called the point of view. Okay? If Bjorn is telling his own story using pronouns like I, me, my, us, ours, and we, how is this story written? Is it written in first person, second person, or third person, boys and girls? Miss Julie, would you like to share?
I think the boys and girls would agree with me, and it's being told in first person.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct, because Bjorn is a character in this story and he's telling the story. So boys and girls, I want you to listen carefully to learn more about what life was like for this young Norse boy. Let's get started. For several days, rain had fallen heavily upon the ground. It would appear that Freyr, the god of fertility, had finally listened to our requests for rain. The farmers who lived on the outskirts of our small town had already sown the seeds for the spring crops, and now the rain would help them grow. After so many days of rain, the thatched roofs that covered our homes were heavy with moisture. The raindrops created ripples in the hundreds of muddy puddles that were now unavoidable in the narrow streets. Despite the rain, the streets were still busy. People were either going to or coming from the marketplace. Some skilled craftspeople sold their wares from right outside their homes. I stood in the doorway and looked out at the hustle and bustle of my town. I watched as smoke from the hearths of the houses rose up into the gray sky. I caught the aroma of meat being roasted for the evening meals. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Father as he worked. I saw him raise a hammer high into the air and then bring it down onto a piece of burning hot iron that laid upon the anvil. As the town's master blacksmith, my father was valued and known for making beautiful, strong, reliable items out of metal, such as swords, jewelry, and keys. He was admired for his physical strength and wise counsel. It was because of him I suddenly realized that I knew almost all of the families in our town. But until this very moment, I had not realized how much I would miss them.
Question time.
Boys and girls, I have a question for you. What do you think a hearth is? Remember, the family was in the room and they were sitting around the hearth. What is a hearth? Think about that. Miss Julie?
Ooh, when you're getting cold, it sure is nice to have a fireplace or a hearth nearby. It was used for lights and for cooking and for warming the house, Miss Quinn.
You're absolutely correct. It's similar to a fireplace. Great job, Julie. Great job, boys and girls. Bjorn, what are you doing? Come here and help me, came the sound of my father's booming voice. He had obviously spotted me standing in the doorway. Yes, Father, I replied as I hurried to his side. I had been working as my father's apprentice for almost 3 years. My father worked in a forge made of wood and thatch, similar to our own home. His forge was always filled with smoke, dust, and flickering flames, not to mention the sound of constant hammering. Question time.
Question time.
Boys and girls, I want you to think. I have another question for you. What is a forge? Remember Bjorn's father? He was in a forge and he was hammering. So what do you think a forge is? Miss Julie.
I would say that a forge is a workshop, a blacksmith's workshop. That's where he got all of his work taken care of.
I think so, because the story did say that in the forge he did lots of hammering. It was smoky, and I bet that came from that anvil.
Yeah.
So it's a blacksmith workshop. So if you said that, boys and girls, you're absolutely correct. As soon as I stepped into his forge, Father handed me the bellows and put me to work. Strengthen the fire, Bjorn. I have work to do, he instructed me. I immediately began to use the bellows and watched as a flow of air fueled the flames. The more I pumped the bellows, the more the flames flickered. As the air shot into the flames, they became more intense. My father was making a number of axe heads, chisels, and nails. He explained to me that these tools would be needed when I reached Iceland. Father, why do so many of our people leave home and travel to faraway places? I asked as I watched him heat pieces of metals in flame. As you know, Bjorn, Odin has blessed our homeland with many things. We have an ocean that helps to feed us. We have rivers and fjords. Even our rugged highlands are very beautiful. Odin has shown us how to build the best ships in the world and how to sail them. Even in the darkest night, we can look up at the stars and find our way across the most treacherous oceans. Bjorn, it is necessary for us to seek new lands. We are mighty people. Our warriors are known as mighty Vikings. When our warriors sail across the North Sea to conquer new lands, people tremble at the very sight of our longships, he explained. Sometimes the people who leave there never come back. I replied, trying hard not to look at him. These are changing times, my son. There is much conflict in our homeland now. For many, it is best that we leave and not return. Bjorn, you are almost 13 years of age. You are almost a man now. Soon you will take a wife, and if Tyr desires it, you will be a Viking warrior too. The assembly members have decided that you and many other young men will establish homes in a new land. It is our way, my son, he said firmly. I did not reply. Instead, I continued to fuel the fire and watch as my father heated, twisted, and shaped pieces of iron into an array of objects. He would frequently explain to me what he was doing. Like many other Norse, my father was an expert blacksmith. My father was such a skillful blacksmith, however, that he had once been accused of employing the dwarves who dwell in the deep underground reaches of the earth to make the fine weapons and tools that he produced. He had laughed aloud at that accusation and exclaimed that if anyone could find these dwarves in his forge, they could pay them instead of him. Several times he let me work with pieces of molten metal. These were the best times, the times when my father taught me the skills that his father had taught him. I just wish there was a way that I could stay in my homeland with my people. Outside the forge, daylight was disappearing and twilight was creeping in. Eventually, as light faded, my father looked up from his work and put his tools away. "Time to eat," he said in a gruff voice, but then he ruffled my hair. "Let's go see what your grandmother has cooked for us tonight," he continued. I already know what it is, I replied. I helped catch it. It's hare stew, I said, laughing. Then, with his arms around my shoulder, my father and I began to walk toward our home, tempted by the smell of cooking. You are now old enough, and tomorrow I will begin to make your sword. My father said, you are honored, Bjorn. Very few calls own a sword. It's a gift from Lord Toki to you. You must name it wisely.
Question time.
Boys and girls, remember Bjorn and his father was getting ready to go in for dinner. Who can tell us what kind of animal is a hare?
Boing, 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 boing.
Miss Julie.
I know. I don't know if I'd want to eat it though, Miss Quinn. I don't think so. But a hare is a mammal and it kind of resembles a rabbit.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. So boys and girls, if you said rabbit, you're absolutely correct. I have a sword. It is the sword my father gave to me. He said proudly, you will give this sword to your first son and tell him the story of where it came from and why you have it. That is how we record our history. Now let's go eat some hare stew. And with that, we entered our home and took our places around the hearth with the rest of our family members. Question time. Boys and girls, after hearing that story about Bjorn and his father and the sword, what do you think will happen next?
Well, Miss Quinn, or Father, is this for me?
That is for you.
You made this sword for me?
I'm handing it over to you.
Oh, well, you know what, Miss Quinn?
What?
I believe the boys and girls would agree with me and say, Bjorn's probably going to use this sword, maybe to fight off some conflict as he's leaving the country.
I think so, too. He's going to need some protection.
Yes, Miss Quinn.
Great job with that. Question time. Okay, boys and girls, put your thinking caps on. What examples did you hear in today's story that signal Bjorn is growing up and coming of age? There were some clues in the story. Think about that. Kind of reflect upon what you heard. Miss Julie, would you like to share what you think the boys and girls are thinking about?
Absolutely. And starting with this sword, you know, for me to be of age, Father wouldn't have given this to me if he didn't think I could handle it. And when he said I would soon marry, woo, I never figured at 13 years old I would be looking for a woman. But all of that hard work that I've been doing signals that I'm growing up.
Yes, Bjorn is definitely growing up. Okay, what job were many Viking-age men, including Bjorn's father, were skilled at doing? So remember in the story, Bjorn's father, think about what he did in the story.
Makes me think of this word, Anvil, and the work that he did. Wasn't he a very skilled blacksmith?
He was.
Yes.
The text told us that Bjorn's father was a skilled blacksmith. Very good, boys and girls. Why do you think a sword would be important to the Vikings? We kind of hinted to that earlier, boys and girls. Miss Julie, why do you think
I
the
know
Vikings need that?
if I'm going to fight in a raid, Miss Quinn, and I think the boys and girls would agree, I would like to have this sword if I'm getting ready to fight. You know, going on raids and then also passing down to my children.
I think, yep. Good answer, boys and girls, and great job, Miss Julie. Bjorn's father says that their people can find their way through the most treacherous or dangerous oceans. How did the Vikings manage to get through such danger? Think about it, boys and girls. Miss Julie,
Miss Quinn, you remember those long ships we rode in?
Yes.
Yes, Vikings, they depended on those long ships.
They did.
To get them through those treacherous waters.
They did. I agree. So, boys and girls, in the read aloud, you heard, as the town's master blacksmith, my father was valued and known for making beautiful, strong, reliable items out of metal. So, we're going to do a little word work, okay?
Word work.
So, our key word for our word work is the word reliable. Say reliable with me.
Reliable.
If something or someone is reliable, it or she or he is dependable or trustworthy. Georgia has always been a reliable person because she is always there for anyone who needs help. Have you ever known someone who is reliable, boys and girls? Who was it? Be sure to use the word reliable when you tell about that person. Miss Julie, would you like to share?
You know, I think Bjorn's father was a very reliable person. And Miss Quinn, my mother is very reliable because she takes care of me.
Oh, that's a great example, Julie. Great example of reliable. Okay, boys and girls, we're going to play a making choices game. I'm going to say a sentence that includes a person or thing. If the person or thing in the sentence is reliable, I want you to say, it is reliable, or he or she is reliable, or just show a thumbs up. If the person or thing in the sentence is not reliable, just say that is not reliable, or he or she is not reliable, or thumbs down. Let's get started. A friend who always is a good listener. Think about it. Okay? Reliable or not reliable? Miss Julie?
I would say a friend who is always a good listener is reliable.
You're absolutely.
Thumbs up, Miss Quinn.
Good job, boys and girls. A person who does not tell the truth. Miss Julie, you want to help me out?
You know what? If they don't tell the truth, I would say that they are not reliable.
I agree.
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Last example. The sun rising in the morning, boys and girls. Is that reliable or not reliable, Miss Julie?
Ooh, what a pretty sight to see. I would say, Miss Quinn, that is reliable. Thumbs up.
Very good. Very good. So, Miss Julie, great job with that activity. So, what are some things that we have learned today that we can add to our KWL chart?
Ooh, I enjoyed that read aloud today. I know I learned that I don't have to call it a workshop anymore, Miss Quinn. I can call it a forge.
We learned a new name for a workshop, a forge. Very good.
Yes, ma'am. And I also learned that the blacksmiths make beautiful, strong, reliable items, just kind of like this sword you gave me.
Great example. Oh, we learned so much, and I know that you all learned much more. Very good. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today, boys and girls. Thank you for allowing me to assist Miss Quinn. All rights and credits from this lesson belong to Core Knowledge Language Arts. We would like to thank them for publicly sharing these materials.
Boys and girls, share what you have learned today. Tell someone at home everything you learned about the Vikings. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.